Previously, Sayadaw explained on the question, what is a yogi? So Sayadaw explained on the definition of yogi. So when explaining what is a yogi, it will not be proper to leave out explaining about Viriya or courage or effort. Because yogi gets his or her name relating to Viriya, effort that he, she exerts. So just by explaining the meaning of yogi without explaining about Viriya, it will not be dutiful to leave out the definition of Viriya. So today, Sayadaw will explain Viriya from both theoretical and practical aspects. So Viriya is translated into many Burmese words as well as many English words. So the English words that are used to translate Viriya into English is vigor, energy, effort. But Sayadaw says Sayadaw is not skilled in English language, but because Sayadaw is skilled in Pali and Nyama, Sayadaw will explain on the definition of Viriya from the Pali and Nyama words. So Viriya, the word Viriya is derived from the word Vira. Vira means a brave person, a courageous person. So when we say brave, courageous person, there are two types. The first type is the bad one, who has the courage to kill others, who has the courage to steal other people's things, who has the courage to commit sexual misconduct, who has the courage to lie, who has the courage to say harsh speech, cursing, or saying senseless talk, who has the courage to take other people's belongings by force, the courage to kill and torture, torment others, who has the courage to believe that after this life there is nothing more, there is the end after this life. So, having courage to do these things, bad things, by body, speech and mind, actually it is not the real courage, but it is very daring. So if one dares to do these bad things by body, speech and mind, the person is harming others as well as harming oneself. So this is called a very daring kind of courage. The second type is having courage to do good things, refraining from misbehavior by body, speech and mind. So to have the courage to refrain from bad behavior by body, speech and mind, it will bring benefit for the person. So refraining continuously again and again from this misbehavior in body, speech and mind, refraining from these wrongful actions by body, speech and mind, is a courageous person. she knows that doing this wrongful action by body, speech and mind can harm others. That's why she will have moral shame and moral fear from doing these bad things by body, speech and mind. So having the knowledge that these misconducts are things to be fearful of, things to be afraid of, then one will have moral shame and moral fear in doing these bad things. So one will build up the courage to refrain from these things. So one becomes a courageous person, having the courage to refrain from misbehavior by body, speech and mind. So this person's body, speech and mind is controlled, and she is not causing any harm to others. So the ones who are daring to do bad things by body, speech and mind, the person is called a daredevil. So not knowing that these things should be refrained, not knowing the bad consequences of these bad things, not knowing that these bad things should be refrained, this person is a daredevil, committing all kinds of bad things by body, speech and mind. At times, the person is indulging in lobha, greed. At times, the person is indulging in dosa, aversion, hatred, anger. So the ones who are selfish, looking for personal gain, then she is indulging in greed. So if one indulges in greed, then one will take other people's things by force, and one will commit sexual misconduct, looking for personal gain only. So not knowing the flaws and bad consequences of these misconduct, thinking them as good, then one has extreme lobha, extreme greed in oneself, losing control of oneself, and end up doing bad things by body, speech and mind. So the person who is losing control, committing bad things because she is indulging in raga, lust, the person is called a mad person out of raga. So the person is frenzied or become crazy with raga, lust. So this person is called a lust-crazy person. And when the person has delusion, when the person indulges in delusion, then the person is frenzied or mad with delusion. So these people who are frenzied or who are mad with lust, delusion and so on, these are the daredevils who dare to do things, lack of control in oneself. One should have prudence so that one will refrain from things that should be refrained. And knowing that the misbehavior are things that are shameworthy, that are frightening, then one will have the courage to refrain from the misconduct. So, selfishness for oneself, for one group, people usually have this selfishness, but when someone is about to do something for himself, herself, or for others, especially for oneself, before doing it, one should think it over whether or not it is beneficial. So one must have prudence in order to think it over whether this is beneficial or not. So by reflecting over and over again, one will become matured and one's knowledge will become nepakapanya. One will have matured knowledge. So even if something is beneficial, one must think whether or not it is suitable. Only if it is suitable, then one must do it. So before doing something, one should think over whether it is beneficial or not, whether it is suitable or not. Even if some kind of work is beneficial, one must think it over if it is suitable. Only if it is suitable, then one can do it. So in order to decide what is beneficial or not, what is suitable or not, one needs prudence and also nipakapanya, matured knowledge. Having matured knowledge, one will know what is improper to do, to talk, or to think. So, knowing what is improper to do, to talk, or to think, one will refrain from doing, talking, or thinking the bad things. So it takes prudence to know what is right, what is wrong, what is beneficial, what is suitable. So it is called Sataka Sampajanya, having clear comprehension what is beneficial, and Sappaya Sampajanya, having clear comprehension what is suitable. So one needs to have this prudence in order to know what is bad thing to do, talk or think, and what is good to do, talk or think. So knowing that the misbehavior by body, speech and mind is something that one should be shameful of, something one should be afraid of, then one will have the courage to refrain from these things. So this courage is good. This courage is the kind of courage that is good and that is associating with knowledge. So the kind of courage associating with knowledge is beneficial both for oneself and others. So this is the kind of courage that the yogis need in order to become a yogi. So in the word yogi, the word yoga or viriya, effort, is the kind of courage that Sayadaw has mentioned before, that is associated with knowledge. So what Sayadaw has explained is essential for every human. So every human needs to understand what should be refrained. So one should understand every human must understand very well what should be refrained and what should be performed. So, Sayadaw had mentioned before that before doing, before talking, or before thinking something, one should think whether or not it is beneficial. If something you are about to do, you are about to talk, or you are about to think is not beneficial, then you must refrain from it. And even if it is beneficial, you must think whether it is suitable or not. For example, brisk walking, vigorous walking, it is beneficial for health. But as a yogi, vigorous walking, brisk walking, it is beneficial for health, but it is not suitable for a yogi. So, even though it is beneficial, yogi must not do brisk walking or vigorous walking, because yogi will lose to note, yogi will lose mindfulness by doing brisk or vigorous walking. So when doing walking, yogi should keep the attention on the foot that is moving, and yogi should pay attention on the steps, lifting, moving, placing, and so on. So yogi should notice with care and respect. Yogi should notice thoroughly, respectfully, meticulously, because it is both beneficial and suitable. So before doing something, before doing, talking, or thinking something, one should choose what is beneficial and suitable. So something you are about to do, talk, or think should both be beneficial and suitable. So just like Sayadaw said, vigorous walking, it is conducive for health, it is beneficial for health, but as a yogi, it is not suitable to do vigorous, quick walking, because you can lose mindfulness. And also, reading. Reading is actually beneficial. And also, it is knowledgeable to read books. But as a yogi who has to be practicing continuously every single second, it is not suitable to read books. So in a way, reading books is beneficial. But as a yogi, when you are doing intensive practice, when you are practicing intensively, reading is not suitable. It is not suitable to read. So yogis must not read while he/she is doing intensive practice, because you are doing wholesome deeds which excel so many times than the ordinary kind of wholesome deeds. So you need to think over whether or not it is beneficial. Even if it is beneficial, you must do it, you must think, you must talk only if it is suitable. So when you are doing intensive practice which is precious, you must let go of other things which are not as precious as this Vipassana practice. So Sayadaw gave an example. You must not do something that you will gain a small thing like a needle by losing a big thing like an egg. So it is a Burmese saying, you must not do something to gain a needle by losing the egg. So it means that you must not do something to gain a worthless thing, less worthy thing, by losing a precious, valuable thing. So, one must not do something that is not beneficial, and one must not do it if it is not suitable. So, if something is beneficial but not suitable, then you must not do it. If something is both beneficial and suitable and timely, you must do it. It is a must to do something that is beneficial, suitable and timely. So, Paṇḍitā is the kind of knowledge, understanding what needs to be refrained, what needs to be performed. So the kind of knowledge, understanding what needs to be refrained, what needs to be performed, is essential both in the worldly life and the Dhamma life. Especially in the practicing of the Dhamma, you need to understand what you should refrain, what you should perform. So the two kind of knowledge is Sattaka Sampajanya, clear understanding what is beneficial, and Sappaya Sampajanya, the knowledge, understanding what is suitable. So these two knowledges, Sattaka Sampajanya and Sappaya Sampajanya, are called as Paṇḍitā Sayadaw. So in Abhidhamma, it is called Patisankhanapala, power of prudence. This power of prudence is very important in having courage to refrain from things that should be refrained, having courage to perform that should be performed. So by refraining, having the courage to refrain, and by refraining, then one will not meet any harm. Having the courage to perform things that should be performed, then one will benefit. So, Buddha guided the Dhamma so that one will not meet harm, but one will benefit. So Dhamma is the guidance or instruction, definite and accurate guidance or instruction in order to bring benefit for others. And Viriya is the discipline or the rule in order to keep the being proper in body, speech and mind. So following the instruction and guidance to bring benefits, one will gain the benefit. It will be beneficial for the person, whoever follows according to the guidance and instruction. And in order to keep the being proper by body, speech and mind, Buddha set down the prohibition or discipline, because if one does not refrain from this action by body, speech and mind, then it will bring harm for the one who commits. That's why Buddha prohibited these things, so that beings will refrain from it. By refraining from these things, one's body, speech and mind will be proper. So Buddha set down the discipline so that one's life will become proper, one's body, speech and mind will be proper. So Buddha did not mean to suppress the being, but Buddha set these discipline and prohibition because Buddha wanted the being to be proper. So in the same way, in this meditation center, there are rules for the yogis. These rules are set so that yogi will be proper. Yogis can follow the teaching of the Buddha accordingly. So these rules are not to suppress the yogi. These rules are not what Jagaji did by himself, but it is in accordance with the teaching of the Buddha. If you are able to follow these rules and discipline, you will benefit. You will gain the benefit. So you need prudence, you need reflection and prudence in order to refrain from things that should be refrained. In order to follow the guidance, you need prudence. So it is called Patisankhana Bala, power of prudence. When one has this Patisankhana Bala, power of prudence, one will have the courage to refrain from things that should be refrained, and one will have courage to perform things that should be performed. By refraining bad things, then one will be free from harm and danger. By performing things that should be performed, it will bring benefit for the person who do it. So the courage will become developed, cultivated and increased. So when the courage becomes from small to big, from less to many, then one will also develop mindfulness. By putting effort in the practice diligently, practicing diligently, sati, mindfulness will develop. If you are able to assert Viriya, effort for one moment, you will develop mindfulness for one moment. If you are able to exert effort for 10 moments, you will be developing mindfulness for 10 moments. So when mindfulness develops, then the mind does not run off from the object. The mind will be calm, concentrated and collected, and thus samadhi, concentration, also develops. As much mindfulness one has, the more samadhi, concentration will be developed. And when concentration develops, wisdom, knowledge will also develop. One will also understand the true nature of the object. It is called sadhana bala, which means power of developing, cultivating this mental strength. So when the viriya effort is strong, one will be developing sati, mindfulness, samadhi, concentration, and also panya, wisdom. So by this way, one will get the taste of Dhamma. When you get the taste of Dhamma, you will understand through your own experience the Dhamma pleasure that is so much, that is so many times better than the Kamarati, worldly pleasure. So if you experience this Dhammarati, Dhamma pleasure, Dhamma happiness, you will understand that this Dhammarati, Dhamma pleasure, excels manyfold than the Kamarati, sensual pleasure. Kama-rati, worldly pleasure, are things that are pleasant to see, to hear, to smell, to taste, to touch, and so on. So most of the worldlings, they are pursuing pleasure in seeing good things, hearing good sounds, smelling good fragrance, eating good flavors, touching good touches. So they take pleasure in these seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and so on. So it is kama-rati, worldly pleasure and sensual pleasure. But these kind of pleasure are meaningless, because these kind of pleasure, these kind of happiness are dangerous and fatal. Because these pleasures are dangerous and fatal, they are not the kind of pleasure that has a guarantee. So the kind of pleasure that has a guarantee is the Dhamma pleasure. What you have been practicing now, the Dhamma can bring the pleasure that has a guarantee. So with Paṭisaṅkhāna Bala, having power of prudence, exerting effort, yogis are putting effort in order to free themselves out of the gravity of the kilesa, defilement. When one can free oneself out of the gravity of the defilement, kilesa, then one will be developing wholesome mind as well as the knowledge. So when the yogi has got to the stage of insight into fast arising and passing of the phenomena, his or her saddha, faith and confidence become very strong, amazingly. So at this stage, the kind of Dhamma pleasure, the kind of Dhamma happiness becomes unrelinquishable and very unique. Because this kind of Dhamma pleasure at the stage of insight becomes unrelinquishable, it means you will not get bored by this Dhamma pleasure. And that Dhamma pleasure is very unique. So in the world there are not any other pleasure that is very unique like the Dhamma pleasure. Because the pleasure you get, the worldly pleasure you get, does not have any guarantee. But the Dhamma pleasure you get through your experience, through your practice, is very unique and unrelinquishable when you get to the stage of insight into fast arising and passing away of the object. So the Dhamma can uplift you. The Dhamma can uplift the person so that the person will be free from the gravity of kilesa, defilement. So the Dhamma can uplift the person, whoever practices systematically, so that the person will become free from the gravity of defilement and will get the Dhamma pleasure. So yogis who are here, you have left behind the worldly pleasure. So the worldly pleasure is just very small, like a needle. So by leaving behind the worldly pleasure, you can get the kind of pleasure that is very valuable. So it is compared to an egg. So So leaving behind the worldly pleasure, which is just like a needle, you will gain the Dhamma pleasure, which is compared to an egg, which is much more precious and valuable. So leaving behind the worldly pleasure, if you practice diligently, you are sure to make profit by gaining the valuable Dhamma. So Sayadaw guarantees, if you practice diligently, you will gain the Dhamma pleasure, which has assurance. You will gain the Dhamma pleasure, which has a guarantee. So when the yogi has got to the stage of insight into fast arising and passing away of the object, when the yogi goes further with the practice diligently, then she will get the benefit of Viriya and will gain Acchanda Sandhi, the ultimate peace or the total peace. So one needs to put effort in order to gain this Acchanda Sandhi, ultimate peace. So in order to gain this ultimate peace, one needs to cultivate courage to refrain from things that should be refrained, and one needs to cultivate courage to perform things that should be performed. So it is the investment that you have to make is to cultivate courage to refrain and to perform. So if you are able to make this investment of courage and effort and go further with the practice, there will be many changes that are very amazing. You will be developing power of prudence, you will be developing mental strength, and you will be developing the mental strength such as saddha, faith and confidence, viriya, effort, and so on. So Sayadaw will go on to explain in next Dhamma talk.